I promised you animals on bicycles. Here they come. Swooping, buzzing and floating their way onto the Mall is the nature sequence of the parade, representing Her Majesty's associations with animals and agriculture. We've got members of the Chiltern Hills Brass Band and the Egham Brass Band playing arrangements of well-known 70s pieces, including the theme from Star Wars. The Royal Academy dancers will perform a beautiful array of moves inspired by nature and gliding between the butterflies, the owls, the foxes. You should be able to spot a giant kestrel inspired by the book Kes in memory of its author, Barry Hines. Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, the 1970s.
Thank you, Claire. Well, as we promised, it is a wonderful melange and a very British spectacle, and what we are looking at here is the 1970s, including animals and agriculture. This is not just animals and agriculture that belong to the 1970s, just to be clear. Taking part in this section of the parade, there are organisations including Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, the National Horse Racing Museum and the National Institute of Agriculture and Botany. There are, I think, around about 10 representatives from the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust taking part in the parade, and there we see the Royal Academy dancers. There's a good big group of them in each section. It takes a lot of energy to dance all the way up the Mall, but they're young, they can manage it. And we were talking just a moment ago, when we weren't on mic, Giles, about whether or not it is a myth that the Queen owns all the swans. And you said, you know, the Queen owns all the swans. And I had that great pleasure of, for once in my life, correcting Giles Brandreth, because that is not true. I will tell you what's true.
Which swans does she own? The ones here and the ones on the Thames, surely?
No, an unmarked mute swan on the River Thames is regarded as belonging to the Crown by default, but the Queen only exercises her ownership rights on some stretches of the Thames and its tributaries.
Oh, there's hope for us all.
You can write that down and use it the next time you want to talk about Queens and the Swan.
What I'm thinking, looking at these wonderful animals here that make me think of pantomime, is that this is the sort of thing the Queen thinks is huge fun. She loves this. High art, sometimes she's not really into, but the fun of it, she loves. She was in pantomime herself as a girl.
She loved to dress up as a young girl.
Yeah. She appeared in pantomimes they put on at Windsor Castle during the Second World War. So the panto animals here are totally on message.
We heard John Major talk about his weekly private, entirely private audiences with the Queen the other day. He was chatting about this to us on Friday and saying that there's only the Prime Minister on a Tuesday afternoon, the Queen and, of course, the corgis, who are privy to all royal secrets. And, you know, the Queen is a great corgi lover. They were introduced to the royal family by, was it the Queen's father?
Yes, he was a great lover, and the Queen used to play with friends who had corgis, and after that play date she was smitten, and both she and Margaret were given corgis when they were little girls, I think 10 or 11 when she had her first.
Her first corgi, I am reliably informed, was called Susan, I think, her first corgi. And now she has, is it 4 or 5, Giles, she currently has. This is the 60s, by the way, making its way up. So at one end of the Mall, the crowd has got the 1970s, and now there are the go-go boots, Twiggy. And we see
there they go.
The 60s in some of its splendour being presented to the Queen. The more...
and it's fun
more
for
allowable
us.
Aspects of
It's
the
a
60s.
reminder, though, that people watching this, the two senior people, are 95 and 90 years of age. So for them, the 1920s, the 1930s are their era.
That's right.
And we're being given the 1960s and 70s because it's our era.
Are they singing Obla-Di, Obla-Da on a loop there, do you think? Have they sung other songs, or are they just singing the one?
You mentioned John Major saying how discreet the Queen is. When I was a Member of Parliament, I had a conversation with the Duke of Edinburgh, and I was telling him about some form that the Queen had to sign. And he said, oh, that's political. The Queen never discusses any of that with me. Don't get a look in, which is intriguing.
That is intriguing, because every day apart from one, she is looking at official papers. She is reader number one.
She is reader number one, but she is Mrs. Discretion number one. And when the Queen became Queen, I said to the Duke of Edinburgh, you know, did you become involved? Were there people there telling you what to do? He said, no, there were people telling me what not to do. Keep out. The Queen is the head of state. She does all of that herself.
And so we're looking at the 1970s here, animals and agriculture, and we saw, I don't know, was it a Shire horse? Was it a Clydesdale horse? There were definitely at least two people inside the costume. And we know, of course, that horses, Katie Nicholl, are still central to the Queen's life. And people that know about such things, bloodstock and so on, say that if the Queen had ever had a profession that was not being Her Majesty, then it would have been to do with horses. So knowledgeable
absolutely. And wonderful that one of her granddaughters is an equestrian, of course, Zara, who we hope we'll see riding in the Olympics. But, you know, the Queen still rides at 90. She's got a lovely black fell pony called Emma, who she rides often when she's in Windsor, without a hard hat. She's always in that Hermes scarf. And she enjoys it. And I think anyone that loves horses know that they're very intuitive. They can't answer back. You can be very peaceful with them. And I'm sure that's probably why she loves being with them so much.
They're the sustaining passion of her life, no question of that. It's often attributed to the Princess Royal, but I believe the remark originates from the Duke of Edinburgh. If it doesn't break wind or eat hay, she isn't interested.
But also, don't you think it's what's keeping her so fit? She's so fit for her age. It's amazing.
And so the 1970s then, just coming up to the top of the Mall, it was, of course, the decade of one of the most significant events for the Queen, the 1970s. It was the celebration of Her Majesty's Silver Jubilee. More than 1 million people on that occasion lined the streets in the capital, London, to watch the royal family as they went on their way to St Paul's at the start of the Queen's Silver Jubilee celebrations. And there we see the Queen's grandson, the man who's been behind organising all of this, just explaining the intricacies and what it is that Her Majesty is watching. Let's go over now to Claire Balding.